Welcome back to the Nano Blitz episode. I don't know what 15, something like that, 14.
I think this is 16.
16. Okay. In this episode, we're going to talk all about Top Gun Mavericks. Sorry, Madden 20.
But we were inverted.
Yes, it actually some of our stuff will be inverted, and I apologize in advance if I let some kind of adult language, Anglo-Saxon in nature. Do not call it French. It is not Norman Frank. Okay. History lesson. Battle of Hastings. Anyhow.
That was extra credit, y'all.
This is actually our first episode with Madden 20 being live.
Yep.
Just to, I guess, maybe intro and bring you up to speed on, I guess, our experience thus far is we started our league, preseason week 2?
Yes.
Okay. A little earlier, and this does not count Hall of Fame game, by the way.
Right.
That's
as
week
well
0 or whatever.
Hall of Fame game should not be counted.
Yeah, it's
probably not even played.
Let's forget about that, Drew. So we did start it very early because we try to maximize really our purchase.
Well, here's the thing, Nate. You can't start a league early. It's not possible. Okay, like I think
I was waiting for this.
You could say that you started the league early if maybe everybody had EA access and you had pre-launch access to the game. That would be starting your league early, right? This is not starting. If the video game is on the shelf and you can pay money for it, and you did pay money for it, then you bought a game and you should be able to play it immediately.
Tell us more on the Twitter there, Tim.
Right, so yeah, not hiding my calm here. So, look, here's the thing. If a game comes out, it should be out. And we've made jokes about this on our podcast before about the game industry releasing incomplete games. We've talked about how Madden puts out a game, EA puts out these sports games that have all these issues with them.
By the way, most of this episode is based on this, so
yeah.
This is just a tease.
And it's a 1 year, it's a 1 year life cycle for the game, and everybody makes these excuses, right? And so we start having this issue. We start our league, and then they come out with this update, right? And we were sold on this idea that franchise mode and online leagues were going to get these season-round updates, year-long updates that are going to incorporate into our leagues.
And that is even though they didn't outright say, yes, we're going to do this, that was the expectation that they were setting, that they were leading up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you say it's going to be a living world, if you say it's going to be dynamic, if you're going to say it's going to be year-long updates for franchise mode, then you're assuming it doesn't mean restarting a franchise every time an update comes out, because that's not updating your franchise. That's restarting your franchise, and that's not how this game gets played.
And we just can't do that.
No. And imagine, we have 6 people in our league. Imagine having a 32-team league that has to determine whether or not they want to restart their league because the first patch has player abilities in it that you cannot access. You can't even edit the players to have said abilities. You can only access them if you restart your franchise mode. So we're up there on Twitter and we're like, yeah, this is a bummer because it's impacting us. And immediately get hit with people saying, well, why would you even start your league? You should never start your league before. I'm like, well, no, this is not on us. This is not our fault for starting too early. You can't start early if the game has been launched. Okay? Don't tell me.
Play to win the game.
You play to win the game. You pay to play
the game.
Right? So I have paid my money So I'm not paying my $60 and saying I'm going to put this box over here and look at it longingly for the next 4 to 6 weeks. I have 12 months to get the most out of this game that I can.
Oh yeah, and we're on a good start, even though it started rocky, and because of said update.
Yeah.
We actually, we did restart the league, which was. Luckily, we were, 3 weeks in on preseason, right?
We were still waiting for somebody to finish a game in week 2, I think. So we were actually pretty good.
And we made the decision as a league to go ahead and say, nope, we got to redo this because it really did affect superstar abilities.
Yep.
Because that update would have disallowed future superstar abilities and stuff like that. Like that's a big thing.
Absolutely.
So we did. We ditched the HomePod and we're going with Take Two.
Yeah. Well, it was Tim FL 2020 Mo Money.
Mo Money.
Mo Money was
HomePod was last year. Yeah.
HomePod was last year. This was Tim FL 2020 Mo Money. Now it's Tim FL 2020 Take Two.
Yeah. So that we started our league. I would say it's been interesting. I'll probably touch base a little later whenever we're talking about the gameplay portion. But I've actually, for the most part, I've actually enjoyed the game. There are things that drive me bonkers and nuts, and not just how many trades Chad does, but
yeah, stop trading, Chad.
That does drive me nuts. But to each their own. I have to kind of pull back. Like Sarita, my wife, is just like, oh, okay, but I just have to pull back. I'm like, what? Why does he need Roquan Smith? Why does he need,
Well, I think he's convinced that lower rated players in this game mean that they're not as good as they were in previous games. So he looks at overall ratings for his players and determines that they're not good enough because he's accustomed to having an all 99 secondary and all of his linebackers 85 plus. Like, that's how he builds, goes and gets those guys. When you find out that, there's not that many linebackers in the 80s and teams aren't really giving them up for, without paying them a lot for those players, that impacts it. And then on defense, defensive gameplay is a lot harder.
It's very different this year. Yeah.
Yeah. I say it's harder, but it doesn't feel like it's harder. It just feels like you're at the mercy of the offense a lot of times. And if you don't get a pass rush, if your pass rush isn't on the quarterback quickly, they're going to have an open man and that guy's going to catch the ball. And that's just the way it is.
Okay, so we're going to start off with gameplay.
Yeah.
Even though we had a couple of other things here.
Before we do, quick anecdote. So I told you the name of our league, right? And it's a private league. You can't get in, sorry. But I created a test league, and I was using the Tennessee Titans, and I named it Titans. And it came back and said, you cannot name your league Titans because it's inappropriate or offensive.
It had tit in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the name of a team in the NFL is inappropriate file save for Madden, and I just thought that was hysterical. Yeah.
It's going to be my new thing. I'm just going to tweet that out. Tit.
Do we have to censor that? Do we have to be an explicit podcast this time around because you keep saying tit?
No, that's not a cuss word.
Okay, just making sure. I don't know the rules.
No, tit is not.
All right, we're going to stop because Ryan Tannehill's kids are probably listening to this.
Oh, shoot. And he is a titten.
And James Vanderbeek has sensitive ears.
So we're gonna go a little bit off script here, I guess, if we do have a script, but so we'll kind of round back to some of the other topics, but since we were on the topic of gameplay, and I think maybe that's a good reworking for this, is since we're already talking about it, gameplay is very, very different than the versions before. I'm happy that, like, I think we're back to a version, like, overall, my thoughts are you can actually pass in this game, which was a little bit more questionable in the last couple versions. Like, it's feast or famine. You're like, am I going to get picked off all the time? In the previous versions. This, I'm not as worried about getting picked off. I guess that's the thing.
I still am, but that's me. That's just me.
Tim did have one of the two interceptions that I've thrown, and the other interception I'll get back to was, well, yeah, it was glitchy.
Go figure.
But basically, like, I do feel like trajectories are a little bit better this year. They've already done an update, though. Sorry that my cat is playing with toys in the background. So if you hear toys, that's my cat.
Yeah, that's the cat.
Man, Ikora. Yes, she's named after a Destiny character. Basically, like, I can find it's just easier for me to pass, but that also kind of brings up. I'm gonna go take that toy away. Give me a second here. Take over, Tim. A little brief pause there, Tim, since I had to take away a toy from Ikora there.
Hey, no problem. We did a little change on the on some equipment while you were doing that as well, because I don't think our audio was synced up. Hopefully, nobody will notice in the final edits.
I always notice. Kind of. Maybe.
Okay.
Gameplay. Zones. So I think I was talking about how there's already been an update that has actually affected zones. Well, I'm trying to be not verbal in bad ways. Hence my very I'm stopping talking basically. So the zones now, the zone coverage that we started the game with is no longer the same.
Right.
So we have to change our playstyle on the go just because of something that they see fit. And basically they changed that zone to take away flag routes.
Right.
Because in competitive Madden, flag routes were being abused.
Is it called competitive Madden?
I don't know.
Is it called Cheese Madden? I'm not sure. And are they competitive players or are they self-important?
It's online, I guess. Probably MUT, stuff like that, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, they put me in the game as a coach in MUT. Now everything I want in the game should matter.
Tell us how you really feel, Tim.
I really feel like people who play Madden competitively are dicks. That's how I feel. And you guys, you know what? Maybe you're not. So sorry.
Prove us wrong.
Yeah. Just go follow the major guys on Twitter, and it's just silly.
I don't follow them. I've watched some of their gameplay and stuff like that, but I have no interest in watching some grown man yell at some other dude, and demean him and tell him he's weak or whatnot.
It's like an 18-year-old kid who's there with his, father. Yeah.
I just no. Luckily, I haven't lost all faith in humanity.
We're getting there.
I'll stop.
We're getting there though.
But basically, they're doing some adjustments and stuff like that because of their tournaments and weekend leagues and MUTs and all that kind of stuff. But how is that really improving the game? because now you can't even throw those flag routes against a zone like a purple was able to take it away, but now you have some of your flat routes and everything like that, your sinks and everything like that, that can take it away just the same as the purple. So
Right.
um, yeah. So whatever. I'm not throwing those routes anymore. I was throwing some of those routes occasionally, and I was like, okay, cool. I could throw those again because last year you couldn't. Well, they made it to where it's just last year again on that. You could throw over linebackers, which is good and bad.
Yeah, it is.
The bad is even if you have a secondary player that's playing in that kind of that mid range, they don't jump, they don't put their hands up, they don't do anything. They literally just look at the ball.
Yeah.
And that is not what a football player does. And I understand like the reason why they have that, because some of the user picks, not user picks, but some of the no look picks and everything like that you've had in the past, the jump picks,
Yeah.
by that level of defense, I get that, right? I can deal with that. It does infuriate me that you're trying to make a more realistic game and then you just take out realistic elements, because, well, it's wrong in the first place.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can come up with, and I'm a little bit more negative this recording here. I was trying to play Mr.
Welcome
Positive.
to my world, mate.
And overall gameplay though, I'm really happy I can use my lower rated players now.
Yeah.
Right? And that because that's that's kind of my it keeps me well under the cap. Because the guy who's making $550K versus 4 million,
It's a big difference.
yeah. And I'm also able to run my air raid offense. It's not quite air raid, it's somewhat there. They didn't get all of it right, but hey, watch some college football. Anyhow,
Sure.
basically, like I'm enjoying those facets of the game. I do feel like defenses, it's all or nothing, meaning you either get pressure on the quarterback or you don't.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you can be picked apart by a user. It's a lot harder, at least in my experience, to get picked apart by the computer quite the same way. Like those big plays. They'll get the completion and they'll be very good at those completions.
Yeah, they will.
But I have found, like whenever I'm not playing a user in this game, it's completely different style than whenever I'm playing a user. It's like Jekyll and Hyde, completely different.
Mm-hmm.
I've had 2 user games thus far. One against Tim in week 1 where I was still just trying to learn defense. And I was still trying to learn my playbook on offense and all of this stuff. Like we're sitting there trying to learn, and it actually ended up being a pretty good game down
that was a
to
fun
the
game.
wire. I threw a pick because I thought that my 6'5" wide receiver would jump. Nope. Granted, like a lot of that was also a defensive scheme that Tim did. He usered the middle there really very well, and then also 2 zone players played their zones very well. So that's my fault on that throw. But I was also trying to get in field goal range so I could win the game.
Yeah. But and even you can look at that though and say, maybe I shouldn't have thrown the ball there, but the way your receiver responds to the situation
Just does nothing.
Yeah, he switches to so he's playing defense, right? And before the ball even gets to him. And then like I had a play in that game where I threw a touchdown pass to one of my receivers who made a play on the ball, put his body between the ball and the defensive back and made a great play, brought the ball down. And it was great. And he was a short player. It was Jakeem Grant. He's like 5'7".
Yeah,
Something like that.
5'7" ish. Yeah,
he's short,
pretty
right?
small.
He's a short guy, so he makes the play. I have not had a wide receiver play like that since, and like I have these.
Darn.
Yeah, I have these physical, larger receivers other than Jakeem Grant. You know, their actual scheme trait is that they're physical players. So that tells me they're gonna put their body in front of between the ball and the corner. They're gonna make plays. They're gonna go out and get it. What we're getting is a lot of what we saw in like Madden 16 and 17, where every pass that goes up, they jump for it and get hit and drop the ball.
Yeah.
Or like in stride, they stop playing the ball and start playing the corner as if they're the defensive player and the corner is the receiver running the route. And it strikes me as really odd when it happens. It happens quite a bit to me as well. And again, like there's things I'm still learning about, like how to play the game better and how to scheme better. But it's like you said, if I don't have any pressure on a quarterback, I have to get rid of the ball super quick.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have a guy wide, like with a direct line on the quarterback, and I still can't get to him before he finds an open man. Or I have something like where I run a blitz play and my safety is supposed to play man coverage on one of the two wide receivers lined up on the left hand side, like my game against the Dallas Cowboys. That's what they're called. Who cares?
There was Dallas Texans, by the way, but they are now the Chiefs. But
yes. I was playing against the Dallas Cowboys, and instead of playing man coverage, he ran from his safety position into a blitz. He was not blitzing. He was not in a blitz position, and now I have a wide receiver wide open in the end zone, and I'm down a score because he's wide open. And it's little plays like that have just decimated me and made me so angry. It kind of takes me out of the game, and then I play worse because I'm upset. And that's on me, but I shouldn't be in that situation either.
Well, I mean, that kind of goes to a rhythm type thing, I think, which has been present in Madden for many, many years of, well, is something rigged? Is it in the coding?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Is it scripted? Yeah.
And Madden, like EA even has a copyright. I forgot the name of it. I wish that I had put it down.
DDA or something?
Yeah, DDA, where basically, and that has to do more with, I guess, head-to-head type thing and streaks and stuff like that, where it will purposely match you with somebody online, for instance.
Yeah.
And
well, there's multiples, right?
Yeah.
And there's ways where the game there's matchmaking aspects of it, and then there's aspects of it where it determines that you're no longer having fun if you're winning by too much. Now, they claim that this is not in Madden.
They claim, but there's a lot of examples, and I still watch a lot of film and stuff like that. Some YouTubers are the worst, but sometimes I'm like, okay, well, if I could pick up every little thing I can, see what their experience is, and they're playing competitive mode and whatnot. They're not playing franchise mode. But fourth quarter comes along, and then boom, it's like, I mean, you have those tip balls and stuff like that happen, and it just happens to fall into a wide receiver after hitting the hands where it should have been caught by the other wide receiver, but they were hit. It's like it's a predetermined thing.
Right. The player who ends up catching the ball runs in line with where the ball is going to go, despite the ball yet having even been tipped for the final time. I had that happen to me where a guy ran a deep route. My safety came up and deflected the pass, batted it back towards the line of scrimmage. The safety or the receiver kept running his route, just kept running the route. Well, the pass after it was deflected hit a corner who was following the receiver in the knee, and the ball then bounced up over and right in line with his route. He just catches it in stride like he was supposed to, and runs it in for a touchdown. And you're like, how is that not set up?
Mm-hmm.
Like that kind of stuff. Here's the thing: can that type of thing happen in real life? Yes.
The odds are just enormous, though, against that.
That's why the Immaculate Reception has a name. That's why it's such a big deal, because it doesn't happen every other game. It happens once in a blue moon. And in this, it happens like every game, and it happens in situations where you're in the fourth quarter, and this is the drive that if it works, you're going to go ahead or you're going to put them away, or it happens when you're trying to get back in the game. Oh, and now your 99 overall carry running back, who you're holding the R1 button on, is going to fumble the ball.
Yeah.
Like those are the little things that make you say, yeah.
Oh, I mean, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
CNC Music Factory. But also whenever you show video and stuff like that and whatnot to the developers on Twitter, and they're like, "Oh, but this happened."
Oh yeah. Let me show you this one clip of a quarterback that we rated a 75 overall, breaking 6 tackles and throwing it 80 yards down the field.
Yeah.
But we rated him a 75 overall.
Yeah. Sorry, that was bringing it back a little bit.
I don't know what they rated him, but I see the ratings guys arguing with a Philly fan all the time about Carson Wentz's rating.
Yeah,
and like I've seen them use clips of Carson Wentz as reasons why crazy things happen in games. I'm like, so I'm just trying to put this together here.
Yeah. Oh wait, yeah, you're a Cowboys fan.
Typically, I see Andre. This is usually the one who's like arguing about whether or not Wentz is any good. Dustin doesn't argue with people. He just sends them emojis and says they're stupid, basically. I think we're moving on a little too soon. Let's go back to gameplay.
Gameplay. You're gonna have little subtle hints of that, and they're not subtle.
Not subtle.
Hashtag not subtle. But basically, like, overall, the thing that makes me happy is that it's so different than the last 2 to 3 versions.
It's different for sure, and that does keep me a little more excited about playing the game.
And I'm actually able to now go down the field with the ball with purpose, as it's intended.
I agree. I think offensively, gameplay is the best it's been on this console this generation.
Yeah.
But that's a really low bar.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that really is the big thing is it was such a low bar. Like, the last 2 years have been such a low point for me as an offensive player. Just, yeah. Man, I struggle to find the words without cussing. How upset and everything that I was. So I'm happy to see that I could run my college-based offense where everything's like horizontal and vertical, and I could do that. I could try to make, whether it's a computer or a user, I could try to have them try to defend me horizontally in order to go actually eventually take those shots. Okay, that's the whole idea of an air raid. They're shot plays. Anyhow, I'm able to do that. Defensively, I've got a little bit of workings on that now. Now that I played Jason, who's a very good player in our league.
Yeah, he is.
And I was, well, I'm going to tell you about the first quarter of that game.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I threw a pass. It hit the offensive lineman. Okay. It was considered a fumble. He picks it up and takes it back for a touchdown. I'm down 7-0.
It was considered a fumble?
Yeah. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my gosh. And another thing is and I haven't talked with Tim about this, but the lag was real in the game.
Was it pretty bad?
It was pretty bad in this. Like, at one point, Jason even, like, because I'm texting him, I'm like, I couldn't even pass the ball.
Wow.
I'm sitting there just mashing the thing, trying to, and it just no response. I'm just like, oh man, okay, come on. Think. Because in this game, you have no time. especially if they're blitzing. And he's blitzing with Shaquem Griffin, who's a 92 speed now for him. Not 91, a 92 speed.
Wow.
Okay? So I have even less time there to react. Even if he's bringing 4, he's going to apply pressure within 4 seconds.
Right.
Right? I have to think that I have to get rid of it in 2 to 3 seconds. Period. So I'm sitting there, and we paused the game and everything like that. And he actually even texted me. He's like, "Hey, you want to start over?" I was like, "No, let's get this done with," that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that was actually kind of a good thing for me. So thank you, Jason.
Yeah, that was polite of him to ask that. That's good sportsmanship.
That showed, okay, well, I don't know what he's experiencing, but I was at least letting him know kind of what I was experiencing via text there. And I'm like, whoa, this is hard. I don't know what's going on. Is it a connection thing? Like my connection's fine. His connection's fine. It's just servers. Okay.
So you're saying it was an EA problem?
Well, I don't know. They're probably going to kind of point that back and say, no, it's your own internet connection. Oh, well, yeah, that's great. I'm running 120 no matter what.
Right.
Yeah, it's very static at that and whatever. Anyhow. That happened, and I thought that was weird. I ended up actually coming back and winning that game and whatnot. But it was kind of like it was a good experience to have that, because defensively I had to do some different things, that kind of thing. And I was trying to throw some different looks. So it was kind of good with that. He figured out some things, but it took him till like the fourth quarter to figure out some of those things.
Yeah.
Because of what I was throwing at him. I was changing up my zones, because zones are now all out of whack. And so the play art, normally whenever you play me, whenever it's defense, that is not what I'm playing. Hint, hint. But basically, I came back, won, but I actually played a pretty good defensive game. I only had two sacks against them.
Oh, wow.
That kind of thing. But and those were actually designed blitzes that I got those 2 sacks on. But I was pressuring them, and I didn't let them run the ball. I was blitz running. So I was doing run blitz, basically. Yeah. I would send an extra guy here or there, and I wouldn't always consistently do it, so it was kind of randomized. I felt pretty good about that. Now, against the computer, I've got a whole scheme that I can do, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to shut you down, whatever. You may get occasionally some big play or something like that, because Madden. Yeah. But I'm going to shut you down, that kind of thing. And I think against San Francisco, for one thing, their offensive line is horrible. I had 14 sacks against them.
That's ludicrous.
Which just does not happen in real life. But I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this. and that kind of thing. And I was like, okay, it's still working. And I just kind of ran that scheme that whole game for that. Which helps out my players and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't have necessarily the best players. But anyhow, gameplay is worlds different than previous versions. Is this a good segue to maybe some of the franchise stuff, or?
I think it is, because
okay.
I think it plays into gameplay, right?
Yeah.
So we always think of gameplay, or maybe some people do think of gameplay as what's happening on the field. That's not the only place you play the game.
Exactly.
Right. So any features in franchise mode, to me, they still fall into gameplay, because you're playing the game. Going back to that. So
Herm Edwards goes in my mind every single time he says that.
So there's a bunch of stuff. First of all, there's a bunch of on the field issues that the game is still experiencing. Things like the kick meter drops off for people. There's which is a pretty big deal. We haven't experienced it, but there's a glitch that Nate was telling me about where if you audible out of an onside kick, your kicker still only runs the onside.
It's only in head-to-head. I know that
Yeah.
In head-to-head online, they've ran into that where a guy actually uses this as a strategy late in the game where he comes out an onside kick and the other team's not expecting it, right?
Right.
And his idea is that he does that so that they can waste a timeout, which is actually really smart. But
Yeah.
if they don't, then he just audibles out of it. Well, it doesn't change the camera angle whenever you audible out of it.
And it hasn't forever.
And basically what you have with this is that the animation still stays the same for an onside kick. So the kicker runs the 10 yards like he's kicking and does the 10 yards and everything, and then the ball flies in the other direction. You know?
So there's some goofy stuff like that. I had a audio one against the Cowboys where Amari Cooper caught a pass and they were like, "That's the Carr to Cooper connection." It's like, no, it was the Prescott to Cooper connection. You know, little things like that are still kind of glitchy. Things like the jump balls, the batted balls that go crazy places.
The winning but not winning.
Winning but not winning.
Like if you're blitzing against the blocker and then you win, and then it's just okay, I'm still being blocked.
Little foreshadowing here is I'd love to get Clint Oldenburg's takes on that, being that go-to guy for that. Maybe if I send him a video on Twitter, he'll respond. Anyway, so there's just a lot of little things like that in the gameplay. But I look at these features, and I was really excited about these features coming into it. So things like the scenario engine, right? So you have the scenario engine, and I think the scenario engine is a great thing for them to build on. But I don't know if you noticed this after the first update, after the first patch. So when you have a scenario communication on your things to do page, there's a little checkbox in the top corner of it that's supposed to be a picture of like a message bubble with like the little exclamation point saying like you have a new text message, and it won't show up unless you're highlighting it. Like it just blinks out, right? Which is a little thing, but it's still a thing. Then you have like a running back. So I had a running back, my second string running back gets a moment because what happens? My starting running back gets injured in the fourth quarter. He comes in and puts up 35, 40 yards in the fourth quarter, which is pretty good for one quarter of play. But he's now registered as a starting running back. So he comes in the next week and is like, "You're not getting me enough carries. You're not getting me involved in the game enough." Well, of course I'm not. You're my backup running back. Why would I get you involved in the game? You know, so he wants more yards. So I go out in the next game, and I don't get him enough yards in that game for him to be happy. And he comes back, and he's like, "I don't know why you didn't get me the ball more. I was wide open." What do you mean you were wide open? You're not even my receiving back. You know, you're a power back. I don't throw you the ball. Like, this doesn't make any sense, you know, in context of what's happening in the game. So there's little things like that in Scenario Engine, which, by the way, I started playing NHL 20 this week because I have 10 hours free on EA Access. They don't have a Scenario Engine, but they have a morale system. And as I've been playing it through, it is already 10 times better like executed than the way Scenario Engine's executed. You know, I had a coach come up to me and he's like, "Hey, I started a expansion team." The coach says, "Hey, we have a really young team. We need a veteran." And I get 3 options to say to him. And the first one is, "I 100% agree. I'm going to make a change." And then you know, actually, what comes out is he just says that we're young. We probably need a veteran presence, and then I get to say, "I agree. What do you want me to do about it?" Where I let the coach tell me, or I can say, "I disagree," which gets him a minor morale drop, or I can try to persuade him that he's wrong, which has a risk reward for morale and team chemistry. So if I say, "You know what, you're right," he says, "Well, we would need to go out and either sign or trade for a player that's 30 years or older." So I go out and I say, I can say I agree, or at that point I can even back out and say, no, I'm not sure that that's the right decision. And kind of back out of it and have that minor morale drop at this point. 2 weeks later, if I haven't done it and I've agreed to it, he's going to come back. If I did do it, he's going to come back like the next day after I did it and be like, thank you so much for doing this, and have another morale increase, right? I had a player come to me and say, something's not right. Something's not right with our team. And I said, I agree. What do you think we should do about it? He says, we should either improve our players or improve our coaching. And I had an option to go out and either fire and hire a new head coach, or try to improve my top 6 forwards, or tell him that he's being a little bit hasty. And so I told him he was being hasty because I'm an expansion team that's played 20 games. I'm not firing my head coach, and nobody's trading me top players right now. So, so it gives me these.
Were you the Seattle expansion?
No, it wants me to be, but no. I always make the Milwaukee Mustangs. But anyway, that's just what I do.
That's what I do.
So my point, though, being like the conversation system makes sense. It's clear what I'm saying, and it happens when it's important, and it feels weighty, and it feels like I can make a decision. I feel like I'm having a conversation with the player. Take that and then go look at some of these conversations in Scenario Engine, and it doesn't feel as intuitive. Take something as simple as, Coach, we have an X Factor player that we have to do. What do you want to do? Ignore him, neutralize him, stop him. What's the difference between neutralizing him and stopping him? Or it's neutralize or shut him down. It's like, what's the real difference between there? I don't really even know what I'm agreeing to.
The only real difference of that is the XP that you get at the end of it.
Right.
That's it.
But as the player, I come in and I'm like, what do those words mean in context to what's going on? And it's not clear, and it doesn't give me an explanation of what will happen when I choose it. NHL does, and it just executes it so much better than the Scenario Engine does it. So again, Scenario Engine's a great idea, but it doesn't seem to be working properly.
And there are glitches, so after our matchup, that's the reason why I was kind of looking down at my phone here. I was actually looking at what Jason sent me, and he sent me a text of his scenario.
Okay.
Whenever he faced me, and even though it was a loss for him, it said, Coach, that was a big-time win against a big-time team.
Yep.
I mean, I'm cool with him getting the XP, but
he didn't win.
You have a Scenario Engine that doesn't even play out right.
Right.
So what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. They used to talk about features and things in the game that used to be in the game that aren't in the game anymore, and the static response was, we don't have it in the game because we don't think it executes properly. Okay, well, here's a bunch of things that aren't executing properly, right? So, I think moving on from Scenario... Oh, you know what? Jakeem Grant had 3 touchdowns against you before getting injured in that first game.
Not my fault.
Week 3, that was week 1. Week 2, he doesn't score a touchdown. He plays okay. Week 3, he comes to me and is like, I had a big game last week. No, you didn't. You had a big game 2 weeks ago. They can't even tell time in this scenario. So
I think it's just randomly trying to... Yeah, it's just... Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of silly. So then you look at other stuff that we were excited about. We love custom draft classes that came in last year. So we built a draft class this year. And we did it because a lot of the ones we looked at online, especially early on, were not taking into account the rating shift and the rating spread that happened. And you have all these players that were in the 80s overall that were coming in the draft.
And that's just not how it works.
Right.
Now.
Right, exactly. So we went in and we started editing. We spent a lot of time on it. And
Tim spent a lot of time on it.
Yeah, but you advised me and you helped me out a lot, especially with the quarterbacks. We have some cool stuff in there. Which, by the way, the if you're on PS4, you can go download this. It's NB 2020 Draft is the name of the file, and my user is the user Samzo77. We've got over 70 downloads at this point, which is kind of cool. But we tried to make it as close as possible. And actually, I think I have a little bit of a... Here's one of the things that I differ from some of the ratings guys on. I don't think there's as much difference in players as their physical abilities and their traits. Like I think that players are all pretty talented. I think the things that end up making them succeed or not succeed are things like their awareness, things like their intelligence, things like the scheme and their situation that they get put into. You know, I would love to see. I'd actually like a ratings bunch, like having less players rated higher, but you don't need a 34 overall tight end.
No.
That guy's not a 34 overall tight end.
He's a long snapper.
He's a long snapper, right. So, first of all, figure that part out. But bring those ratings up a little bit more together. So, I think, like, if you go look at our quarterbacks, we have a lot of quarterbacks in the 60s. Because I don't think that you're taking a 7th-round quarterback that's going to be a 52 overall. A 52 overall, even in Madden 20, is never going to play a game. Now, here's the truth is that's what happens a lot of times with 7th-round quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
But as a user, I want to feel like I can eventually make something of him if I so choose.
Yeah.
And putting them down in the 50s means that you're not going to be able to do anything with this guy ever. Tough luck, you know. At least that's how it feels.
And at least starting them in at, say, 59 or 60, that's still workable.
Exactly.
I feel in this version that's still workable.
Yeah.
I got guys on my team. Like, my starting right tackle right now is, he's now a 61, but he started out as a 57.
Yeah.
But I had him on the bench. But I'm starting him now because I want to develop him.
Yeah.
And he was a 7th-round draft choice, not this past season, but the season before.
Okay, yeah, that works. You know, so I think with this draft class, we have 450 real players, done a bunch of mock drafts, done a bunch of stuff where have simulated 10 years in advance, like to see how these players do, and I'm really pleased with how they just kind of fit in with the rest of the league, and with how they develop. You know, they don't overtake the league. It's not like the greatest draft class that ever happened.
No.
But these players, depending on their situation and where they go, some of them really will sprout up, which is really cool to see. So we feel like it's a really good draft class. We think you should check it out. So, again, it's NB 2020 draft. Samso77 is the user on that one. It's only on PlayStation 4. No, we're not going to do it for Xbox at this time. But just kind of putting that out there. So going back to how that cool feature that we really like breaks the game is you go in and it's hit or miss, because I did a bunch of leagues where this didn't happen, but in our league it's happening and there's no way to fix it. You go and you scout the player, and it says they're a first-round draft pick, regardless. Yeah. Regardless. And I guarantee you when we get into there to go draft it, they're all going to say they're rated 0 in talent.
That, and it'll probably do another thing that it'll do with that is and this happens even with non-custom draft classes, is how it will change it. Like, so whatever you scouted, and let's say if they were initially a 3rd round. Yeah. Okay. Let's say late 3rd round. And whenever you scout and you do the full scouting, and it's like, mid 2nd round. Yeah. Well, it'll just disregard all of that. So you have to pretty much just either take a picture or note that down or whatnot. Yeah. Have your draft board is going to be so important in this year's version because of how buggy it is.
And not your Madden draft board. Your written draft board is what's going to be important.
I have a draft board there, and then I take pictures, and that way, then I have them in a note. And so, do your thing.
But think about it. You know, we put all that work into this, and now it doesn't even. You can't even scout it properly. We made efforts to make sure there were players that were going to be better later in the draft. You know, because they weren't valued as high. But now you can't pick those out because the scouting doesn't work properly.
So good luck to everybody who's using our draft class and drafting a quarterback. There are actually some really good ones in there. But
I think that it depends. It has nothing to do with our class particular.
No.
Because it's happened to us on one test league and on our league, but in some of my other test leagues it didn't happen. So I don't think it's even has anything to do with our specific file.
No,
it's just a Madden glitch.
It's just a glitch, yeah.
And it's stupid. And fix it, guys.
But they can't push that fix.
Right. And then one of the cool things we worked with too was making sure that we had some better developers in that draft class. So star, superstar developers. And when you draft a star or superstar developer, they come out as a hidden development trait, right? And they fixed it where they no longer show what they actually are by how they flex. But
there's still a thing that even though they fixed that, sometimes it'll still vibrate.
Oh, right.
Your controller will still vibrate.
And that's actually how you know when you go scouting is whether or not it vibrates. If it's and dings, like there's little tells that will tell you, even though the photo's not showing it to you. But
yeah.
At any rate, hidden development traits still don't count snap counts. Still, the first patch said that they fixed it, and I feel like it actually got worse.
It's pointless.
Yeah.
It was a great idea.
Executed incredibly poorly.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't. Yeah. Like I have what, three or four hidden guys. Yeah. So with you know how you adjusted. So the fix for that is that the commissioner has to go in there and adjust them or whatnot. And
that's what we hoped the fix would be.
We hoped it. I didn't even bother because I was like, I've read and I was like, it's hit or miss on that. Mm-hmm. Sure enough, didn't work.
Didn't work. So I went in and I edited everybody's players so that they would show what their actual development trait is. We advanced to the next week and everybody reverted back to hidden development trait. So I have an 81 overall superstar tight end who's supposed to have one or two superstar traits that he does not have access to.
Yep.
Because the
development isn't active right now either. It'll be active next season.
Right. So again, great idea. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Right after we created that draft class too, file sharing went down for some reason on PlayStation and was down for several days, and it's just foolishness. It's utter ridiculousness that this completely released game, and then that was the other thing we alluded to at the earlier, is you said you're going to be updating franchise mode with these updates, but then you find out you have to restart your league, and that's not an update, that's a do-over. And that's so dumb, guys. That's so terrible. What are you doing out there? Why is it this way? This game is so bad. And it's because of these issues that we're running into. It's like the gameplay, yes, the gameplay has improved. But the rest of the game is a pile, guys. It's a big pile, and it smells really bad. Not because you didn't put in effort, not because you didn't try, but because everything you tried to accomplish, you failed at. You didn't. Yeah. It doesn't work in the game. It's hit or miss. And if half of your purchasers, half of your users are experiencing these types of issues and you still haven't fixed it, people are literally being impacted by their online records because of the kick meter issue, and it still isn't fixed. So, you tell little Timmy or Tommy to aspire to be one of these competitive Madden players who are a joke, by the way, with the way they act on Twitter and the way they behave. You tell them to aspire to be one of these jokers, and they can't even do it because they can't get a good record because your game is broken. Boo.
I told you that it would be kind of a little. I guess we're being a little bit more real this time. Like I was trying to play, I guess, devil's advocate and hopefully be positive, but after having my hands on with it, I'm just like, you improve the gameplay, but it's buggy. It's still got its bugs to it, but overall, hey, you know what? That's how it should have been 4 years ago. But
right, it should have been.
And I understand. That's me trying to bring myself back to a level head. But the franchise stuff, like, first you don't even acknowledge that franchise is part of the game pretty much on a consistent basis, even though a majority of people probably play franchise of some kind.
They've said that franchise is the most popular mode, that most people will start a franchise.
And then it is a steaming pile. Just exactly what, it's, I wish I had an alternative. And don't give me the whole Doug Flutie maximum football type thing, which actually just recently passed Xbox Live stuff.
Comes out like September 27th now. There's some really cool features in there.
Yeah.
The way they're doing, like, it's a college game.
Yeah.
So, like, the way they're doing recruiting looks really cool. And I would love to see features similar to that and a AAA title like Madden, but I'm not going to get a lot of enjoyment out of playing that game.
No, it's just not real enough, I guess. But then again, Madden, it's kind of...
That's why I would rather be playing NHL 20 or FIFA 19 or FIFA 20.
Or MLB, the show, like...
Yeah, or even NBA 2K with all of its issues.
Yeah, I could be Sophie Cunningham.
And and I'm going to bring this up real quick because I think about this every time. We talk about how much better from a franchise mode and gameplay style games like NBA 2K are, games like MLB The Show are, games like NHL 20. NHL 20 got all of our features we've been asking for a Madden game. Games like FIFA. But there's one thing that they don't have, which is the whole reason you and I even play Madden still.
It's football.
Well,
that too, I guess.
Online leagues.
Yeah.
You can't get an online league. So I think the question I have for you, Nate, I'd love to get your... Because you didn't know I was going to ask you this.
Uh-oh.
Like, if Madden could have all of those features and the better gameplay, but it didn't have an online league, how would you feel about that?
Ooh. Well, okay. Two parts to this. And he did put me on the spot here, so...
Maybe on the spot.
I'd be very happy in a lot of regards because I was like, oh, hey, I can do this. But then I would be like, but you used to have online leagues.
But you used to. And that's...
and that really just, that is, like, there's so many things in this game that used to be there that were good, and then you just,
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, though. NBA 2K used to have online leagues.
Yeah.
MLB The Show used to have online leagues. They don't because they wanted to focus on core gameplay stuff. Even though they were blowing games like Madden out of the water when it came to core gameplay stuff.
Yeah. And honestly, those didn't have a whole lot of online league stuff. Like, there's more Madden online leagues because football is kind of king in the United States.
Yeah. Well, it's just like fantasy football with a joystick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It can be, anyway. It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
We want it to be.
We want it to be. Yeah. I do like the speed of Andy Isabella, by the way. Yeah. I like my speed.
And before we move on, I do want to mention the soundtrack real quick. We've brought this up before.
The Need for Speed.
For another year.
Tom Cruise reference.
Okay, so for another year, the Madden soundtrack is nothing but rap. Or you can do the...
It's not rap, it's hip-hop.
Hip-hop, whatever. I'm sorry I'm not educated like that, but it fits in that genre, that scheme of music, right?
Yeah.
And great. It's good music. It's not terrible music by any means, but it's not diverse. It's not eclectic. There's not variety.
I don't know. I haven't listened to any other one other than Big Numbers because that's the first thing I do is turn off the soundtrack because it's all the same.
Right, exactly.
And it's not nothing against it. I actually listen to some hip-hop here and there, that kind of thing, but it's not my first genre to listen to.
Well, I go play NBA 2K, and it's not all hip-hop.
I love I keep the 2K one,
Yeah.
and Sarita kind of laughs at me because then I know all the lyrics.
Yeah, they work in a couple rock songs, and they always put in some classic stuff. They'll put in some classic hip hop. They'll have a classic rock song. They'll have a modern rock song. And so here's the thing that gets me with the soundtrack on Madden 2 is you go into a game and you're playing like a game at Ford Field or wherever you're at, and you can hear on the overhead, High Hopes by Panic at the Disco, or you hear Believer by Imagine Dragons, or you hear Shufflin' by LMFAO,
Or GNR.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Jungle.
Welcome to the Jungle.
Yeah.
But these songs are not available for you to listen to on their soundtrack. It's just in the game.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me is that it's in the game because NFL fans listen to this type of music, and it's what people who go to the games expect to hear.
But it's in the game.
Right. But it's not what your players.
It's in the game.
Yeah. But it's not what I'm gonna hear when I'm in franchise mode. Like, I want variety in my soundtrack. Just give me variety. Keep the stuff that you have in there, but get me some variety. That's all. And they used to do that. They don't anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a digression.
Of the soundtracks, like MLB always does a great job. 2K does a great job. I'm not as familiar with NHLs, even though I will be buying NHL. Actually, maybe I'll just do that today because Sarita wants it. Because go Blues.
Yeah. I would say that
it's fun.
NHL and MLB have variety in the soundtrack, but they don't have enough songs on their soundtrack.
Yeah.
NBA 2K always has a huge playlist with a lot of variety.
Yeah. And it's all across the board with 2K. The 2K soundtrack. Actually, some of the older MLB soundtracks were really, really good.
Yeah.
But again, not quite as long.
Yeah. And then FIFA's soundtrack always has a little bit more world sound to it.
Yep.
Like music from other countries going on.
I would say that does an equal job to the good ones.
Absolutely.
Not Madden.
Yeah. I always hear music that I wouldn't expect or I've never heard before on FIFA, which I really enjoy that aspect of it. Okay. So that covers soundtrack.
We've lost that love and feeling.
It's gone. So I would like for us, let's talk about Clint Oldenburg.
Yeah.
And Anthony White have left Twitter completely.
Let's just talk. This will be our social media segment here, which we've been not necessarily teasing. We've just been we've
been telling you that it's a struggle.
It's a thing.
So I think if you've listened to our show like Ryan Tannehill does, or James Vanderbeek,
or Jason,
or Deion Sanders Jr.
Who were you saying the YouTuber that also has Twitter? What's his name? I forgot.
Who's Mills?
Yeah, Mills Gaming.
Mills Gaming. Yeah, these guys are religiously listening to our show. Disclaimer: they're not.
I think we're up to 10. I think I declared that on Twitter at some point or whatnot.
We've always been going for quality listeners over quantity listeners. So
our winner of the actual free copy, which I thought was actually kind of fun this year. That we could do the Chad play your game thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Having everybody on the Twitter tweeting Chad play your game. That was great.
Anyhow, sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, so Clint Oldenburg leaves Twitter. Now we've talked about this on our show. We never really thought that Twitter was the best place to give feedback to devs about a game. And we don't like people who go on Twitter and tell Clint Oldenburg nasty things about his family as a way to tell them they don't like his game. Look,
Twitter's the worst, and yet it is the only social media that I have.
If you're out there saying hateful things to these people, get off Twitter, get a life, grow up, stop being that guy. There's a difference between sometimes throwing shade and sarcasm between saying I'm going to come after your family.
That is wrong.
Yeah. And if that's you know what? ditch your burner accounts. You're not funny. You're not effective, and nobody loves you. Get out. Just get out of everything. Don't show your face ever again. If that's you, if you're the guy saying those things, and I don't mind saying that, I'll be the bad guy on this. I don't think I'm the bad guy. I'm saying what everybody should be saying, which is stop being that guy. Don't do that to real life people.
Be a productive human with like formatted criticism that is in hopefully a positive manner. We've been a little bit more negative in this episode, but we're trying to be positive, but we're just so fed up.
We're being critical.
Yeah, we're not going out and saying it's trash and we just called it a steaming pile.
Okay, but we recorded it with our real names and voices.
Yes,
like we're going on the record saying that we're not pleased with this, and there's a difference in how that's being done.
Yeah, we're trying to do it because we would be. I know I would. So I'm not necessarily going to speak for Tim on this. If they have something to say it to us. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
But don't send me a freaking emoji or something like that. Don't try to look in our Twitter history and say, "Oh, but you said this." But we'll get to that.
Yeah. So Clint used to actually be pretty bad on Twitter. He used to feed trolls. And I always question that. And here's the thing. I don't think Twitter is a great place for us to communicate with devs.
Nope.
I think devs need a safe place to communicate with their fans and with the people who play their games, the consumer. And I think it needs to be official, blogs and official message boards and things like that. It needs to be moderated. It needs to be, it needs to be a safe space, and there needs to be rules of engagement. All that kind of stuff needs to exist, and we shouldn't be going out to Twitter looking for people who make games so that we can tell them to jump off a cliff because we didn't like their game. It's not okay, right? So Twitter was never a good place to do this, but for some reason, under the Rex era, they decided that it was a good place to do this, and everybody was on Twitter. This is where they do a bunch of contests, and all the developers are giving away demo keys, things like that. So I understand why Clint is leaving Twitter. If this is why he's leaving Twitter, then I understand why. But he probably shouldn't, this shouldn't be an expectation for his job anyway.
Nope.
And if you don't like that he's not on Twitter, too bad. So, Clint, you do you.
Yeah.
Keep working on your game. Hopefully it'll get better.
That's my hope.
Yeah. And hopefully you're not shutting down all criticism and you're finding it from constructive places.
Who are not a couple of other individuals that are still on Twitter.
Right. So let's talk about that real quick because so in our last episode we were talking about ratings and we were talking about the guys who do ratings, and here's the thing. Andre is still doing okay, but he does a few things here and there. So the other day he put out there like, "Hey guys, I know a lot of you think we're biased. Tell us who you think we're favoring and why, or who we're not favoring and why." And as soon as people started pointing out players, he immediately rebutted every single one.
I didn't take the bait.
Yeah.
And actually, Tim had texted me a day after I'd seen it. I was like, nope, I didn't take the bait. Because I was like, I already know the answer. I already know what I'm going to get as the answer.
The answer is, well, I'm right. And so, look, it's okay to be confident. But as we discussed in our last podcast, Andre's not a scout.
Nope. Even though he claims.
Yeah. He's not a scout. He's not a professional scout. He's just really high on his opinion. And that's it.
Okay.
But we also pointed out that he's probably more qualified than lead ratings adjuster, which is Dustin. And when we talked about Dustin, I pointed out his extensive background as a valet and how that doesn't necessarily make him qualified. And I kept saying that, qualifiers, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just saying this is what his history is. Today, I'm done with the not being disrespectful thing. I'm done with I'm not look, we got this clown going out on Twitter. Everybody knows he's a Cowboys fan.
Yeah.
Everybody criticized the ratings that they gave Dan Jones from the Giants.
Who's now the starter.
He's still only a 68 overall rated.
68?
Mm-hmm. He's still only a 68.
So they have increased him by...
5 points from when it was announced.
Exactly.
So he started as a 63. He's now a 68 overall. He was the most effective quarterback of the rookie class in the preseason, which is what kind of helped get him boosted up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody also criticizes him every year for how bad Eli Manning plays in the game, for how bad Eli is rated. And he has always been a troll about that.
Big time.
Where he'll be at a game and like Eli will throw an interception and he'll take a picture of the field, and he was doing this 4 years ago and be like, "Oh, I guess I got that Eli rating right." So he took it to a new level this time, and so just in the last couple of days, he's retweeting people's tweets from July saying, "You messed up Eli Manning's rating." And then he's putting it with like little smiley face emojis and like, "Look at me now. Eli does suck. He does deserve a 73 overall because these guys aren't even starting him now." Okay, but they benched him for a guy that you rated at 68 overall. But how petty do you have to be to go back 3 months and say, or 2 months and say, "Look at me now, y'all. Try to argue with me now about this Eli Manning rating because I was right."
Oh, no, don't say how petty. How much of a 13-year-old?
Right.
It's a maturity thing.
It is. What are you, a child? Get over yourself, dude. This is just unacceptable, and another reason why developers shouldn't be on Twitter, because not everybody can handle this type of conversation. So you know what? You need to take a page out of Clint's book. You need to get the hell off Twitter because you are a clown and you are a joke. And you want to know why people think that you're a Cowboy homer? This is why people think you're a Cowboy homer. Because you're a dick about it. Because you're a jerk about it. Because you're going to go dig up these things. And then you have the audacity. Some guy rebuts you. Some guy calls you out for it. Says, "Dude, laugh it up now because you're going to be out of a job in a year." And you retweet that and you're like, "Gee, I wonder why devs are quitting Twitter." Well, it's not because they're dicks like you. It's because they're getting death threats. This guy's calling you out for your stuff. So you know what? Get over yourself and don't play the victim when you're the one who went back on his Twitter account 2 months ago and liked his complaint about you rating Eli Manning too low. So if you wanna get serious about it, you are not a victim, Dustin. You are an overglorified valet who has had a job for way too long doing something you are not qualified for. So you need to shut up and thank your lucky stars that you get a paycheck every week doing something that every one of us would love to do and are equally qualified to do. So shut up, sit down, get off Twitter. All disrespect intended, Dustin.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to adjust the temperature here. I'm gonna put the air down.
Forgive me. If you've listened to our show, this is not how I typically behave. But
he's worked up about it.
Yeah, this has been an ongoing thing where he keeps pushing this envelope of this mentality that he's just smarter or better than everyone, and that's what he's doing. And he stirs it up and then wants to play the victim. Get off your soapbox, bud, because it's busted. You're not better than everyone.
It's a double standard, and it kind of that's his track record.
Absolutely.
And so,
well,
I was actually enjoying Clint lately.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the past, 6 months or whatnot, like I've enjoyed some of his feedback and some of his like looking at this and everything like that. And so that's kind of unfortunate with that situation, because the world just it's cruel, that kind of thing. But I'm worked up just as much as Tim is. I'm just not verbalizing it.
I appreciate you trying to balance me out here.
I'm trying, man. So I actually, before we started recording, I was like, how do I not F-bomb constantly? and quite literally, I've kind of tried to level myself out because that's not me either. Like I don't want to get worked up quite like what Tim did there, even though I'm.
I understand. That's not how I anticipated
I
saying
didn't.
this on the show either.
I've seen Tim pretty mad before, and so I mean that's whew. And it takes a lot. Like Tim's a pretty good guy. He's pretty level-headed and tries to think about it before he says it.
I think my button is when people act like they're better and smarter than other people.
Yeah,
and that's what really gets me about this guy.
Yes, I'm not gonna belittle or anything like that, but I am gonna say, he has a responsibility that we don't have. And that's the reason why I'm very upset with how he carries on and continues to carry on. And this is the guy who is actually, he is affecting my gameplay.
Yeah.
So, and yes, it's not the gameplay itself, but it is the ratings. It is how a quarterback reacts or whatnot, or a certain player or whatnot. Like, he is affecting my experience every single year. And so I don't want him to actually try to troll somebody just because he's being trolled. Trolling is not good. Whether you're, like, if you're trolling back, like, that's not good.
Yeah. You're excusing the behavior at that point.
Yeah.
You're saying it's okay to do this.
And you're asking for more of it.
Absolutely.
And then whenever it gets too far for you because you did that action, then you're like, woe is me. Come on, guys.
Don't be mean, guys.
Oh my gosh.
It's just a game. Yeah, it is just a game.
I'm going to go park my car.
Yeah, go park some cars, Dustin. Look, it's
Sorry.
like you said. He has a responsibility. He is the face of. Mm-hmm. He is a face of EA. He is a face of the Madden team.
And he made himself more of a face this year.
Yes, he purposefully put himself out there as a face. This is, so you don't get a personal Twitter account at this point. This is your work Twitter, dude.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. And like what we put out on Twitter represents the Nano Blitz, right?
Yep.
Okay, the Nano Blitz is not a $1 billion gaming industry. It's just two guys who are having fun doing commentary. We represent ourselves. We don't represent a conglomerate. We don't represent a sponsor. We don't represent any of those things. He does. And he should take that seriously, and he should be a gosh darn professional about it.
My own personal Twitter account, I cannot tweet some of the stuff like what he does.
Right.
I could because I could be fired for that.
My Twitter doesn't even tell you who I work for.
Yep, same here.
But I could be liable, or I could be fired for representing them in a negative way, or for disrespecting our customer base in a negative way, like he does to EA's customer base.
Yep.
And it needs to stop. Somebody needs to tell him to get off Twitter that has the power to take him off Twitter.
Yeah. Because honestly, if we say something, he's just going to be... Or he'll dig up into our Twitter stuff where I texted out pants or something like that and be like, what is this?
Yeah.
I didn't do that, by the way. I don't think. I had to think there for a second.
Right. But again, I think it plays to his strengths, though, because he's like self-admitted he was discovered complaining on message boards about the lack of attention to detail around equipment, which is why he's the equipment guru. And he does a great job getting good equipment in the game.
Yeah. He occasionally gets a little bit wrong. But
usually he's got a good...
He's pretty good at it, but like some players will switch, and so they'll have alternate.
Yeah.
So I've gone in and changed some of my players that he had one, and yes, they have worn that. So very accurate, like down to the T. I switched it up to the other one because I like the other look that the player also wears.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And there's usually a reason for it to, like, why something didn't happen. And then, like, likenesses don't come down in roster updates. They come down in patch and title updates, which is something people have to be aware of. They've been saying that a lot. Something that really surprised me, though, that I've been seeing, the ratings guys don't determine who has abilities and what they are. Like, they do to a degree because you have to be 80 or about to get an ability, but they don't determine who gets abilities and what those abilities are. Which is really kind of strange if you think about it. If not them, who?
Well, I know that, Patrick Peterson didn't get any abilities.
Why was that?
He's not a superstar.
That's weird. He plays like a superstar in real life.
He's a 92, but
Really?
he's a star developer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Sorry. He's not what he was maybe 3 years ago. I get that. But
Yeah.
anyhow, Chris Harris wasn't what he was 3 years ago anyhow.
Right. Speaking of what people not being what they were a few years ago, or even just a week or two ago, one of the complaints that the Raiders get about is how high they rate players who've missed extensive time with injury, and they always come back and say, "Well, we can't rate a guy. We can't lower a guy's rating that's been injured, other than maybe his injury rating, just because he didn't play. We have to see how he plays to rate his ability to play." But you discovered something pretty interesting today. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I occasionally just look around, and so I just popped into the player rating database on the website. Okay, I did big movers, because that's the rap song, right?
Big movers.
It's big money, but
I don't know.
And it's kind of funny, looking at some of the ratings and whatnot. And Melvin Gordon is at the top because he's the highest rated player that has had a big movement. That sounds like a poop. Which this is a big pile, but anyhow, we're gonna just name this big pile.
The episode.
He went from a 92 overall to a 90 because he's holding out.
Yeah, why?
I'm just.
Did Le'Veon Bell reduce in overall from last year to this year?
I don't see Telvin Smith on this list, and he's kind of retired.
Yeah.
I'm at a loss for words. It's stuff like this, so some of the little things like this are what piss me off. It's the little details, okay? And if you can't get something like this, what else are you doing?
Yeah.
Because if you have the standard of, okay, well, he's injured a lot, and I'm not going to lower his rating. Well, if he's just not playing because he wants more money, well, I'm still just going to lower his awareness by 5, so he goes down to.
Yeah, why? What was your basis? Because he's not playing. He hasn't played all season. He didn't play in the preseason. He's not playing in the regular season. So you arbitrarily decided to lower his overall by 2 points. Based on what? What's your reasoning behind it? Did you lower his... here, at least give me an explanation. Did you lower his awareness by 5 points to lower his overall by 2 points so that he would be easier to trade because you think they're going to trade him?
Hypothetically, if that was Ezekiel Elliott, would you have done it?
No. God, no, he wouldn't have, because Ezekiel Elliott is the second coming to that dude, right? Like, why would we do that? We wouldn't do that.
No, I was getting at the whole Cowboys thing. Anyhow.
Well, exactly. Exactly, because it's the gosh dang Cowboys. So, you know what? They can do no wrong. And we've already pointed out, special takes they've done for players on the Cowboys before. Like, with their backup running back getting, his speed boosted because...
Who I've seen more of that dude play in person than they have.
Yeah. And so we're going to raise his speed because he was sick on Combine Day, but you're not going to look at somebody else's, this is really important we get this right because he's a Cowboy. And not pulling punches today.
Yeah. I guess we're fed up and yeah.
I hope that our next podcast we don't have to talk about.
I hope that we don't. So yeah, like I keep on. It's gotten to a point of frustration that I'm just. And I've said this before. Man, I just wish that there was an alternative that I could actually play.
I'm right there with you.
That I could actually enjoy playing. That was. I mean, so all the in workings and everything like that. Of, like, you keep on hearing about like NCAA. Man, if we just could have NCAA,
Yeah.
and not I just wish that it wouldn't even be from EA at this point.
Heck
Have
yeah.
2K just do NCAA, have them negotiate the rights, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Have them do that, because you know what, their track record right now is better
Yeah.
with the franchises that I have played, that they own. I don't have faith in, not necessarily EA. I don't have faith in Tiburon now, and
Yeah.
who's
'Cause
the
there's-
developer of it, because it's not like NHL. And I hate to do this because it's a different sport and everything, but it's an EA product.
Absolutely.
Like, I am just, I want to hit something right now.
Yeah.
It's frustrating because I want it. There's so much that it could be better at, and it's little things like this
Yeah.
that show the dysfunction that the Madden franchise has.
Absolutely.
And you know what? I know that their intent may be good, execution is just not good enough. And I try to ask in a positive manner and everything like that. And I think Clint is trying to, have the gameplay and everything like that go in the right way. I don't know about the ratings guys or anything like that, but that's a whole nother thing. I think that there's some good inroads, but then as soon as they take a step forward, it's at least 3 steps back for me. Done.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you, buddy. Like, I was hoping this episode would be talking about how great Madden 20 was. And it just kind of ruined. It's just been ruined by our experience with the devs, with the features not working the way that as they were supposed to work, the way we were sold on them working, and having to wade through people telling us that our expectations are too high for a $60 game that's been in development for over 30 years. Like, I don't...
Sure, the gameplay is what it should have been 4 years ago, right?
Right.
And I'm happy about that. Thank you, right? You emphasize that. It's still got its bugs, but you know what? I can live with that. But some of the other stuff, it's just like, why even have it in there? Just don't do it.
Right.
And just say, you know what? It's not ready. Right. That's cool. Just say, hey, we are working on something that will actually do this. Like, have a developer roadmap. Okay? Bungie has been doing that for Destiny, for instance, and they've gone on to tons of criticism, but they have a roadmap, and they're trying to actually say, hey, you know what? These are things that we're working at. And you know what? They use Twitter, and they're not, like, trash bagging people.
Right.
So, like...
I think that's why I've been pretty harsh about the competitive Madden players. But it's because when I see them on Twitter, they're doing these bad things that we see some of these devs like Dustin doing, where they're not encouraging quality community interaction, quality community conversation, which is what we wanted to be with this podcast. We wanted to have our voice, and now I don't know how many episodes we've done now where we're just so disappointed and so frustrated and so upset with how they're behaving, how they're putting this game out, and we want something better. So I think maybe our next episode we should focus on solutions and talk about what we'd like to see them do and talk about how to improve it, or maybe talk about features from other games that they should bring over and things like that, and try to direct it that way so we don't feel so negative by the end of our podcast.
Yeah, I would like But we have talked about some of that stuff, but maybe having an actual like positive feedback type episode that we don't focus, like, we don't necessarily acknowledge the bad. We just talk about, hey, this is how it currently is. This is where we could see like, these are features that we would like so that we can actually do this or that, like, I don't know how we're gonna do that.
We'll talk off. We'll talk after the show about some game planning, but that may or may not be what we do. But like, yeah. I just want to find a way for us to go positive with our podcast next time.
Yeah.
So that all of you lovely listeners can hear us not yell and use terms like steaming pile during our podcast.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise is upset at us right now for how negative that we are. We're not jumping on couches and everything like that. What I mean?
Well, we don't have Katie Holmes in front of us.
Neither does he.
No.
Oh!
Sorry, Tom. We love you.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else? I think.
No, we've covered the spectrum. I think. Yeah.
Well, thank you again for listening to us. Life happens. That's the reason why it's been a month and a half ish or so.
I think 2 months. Because it was July.
Yeah.
We put it out on July 4th.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it that long? You should. Wow.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned at all Born in the U.S. or Born in the United States of America, the Tom Cruise movie.
Oh, you mean Born on the 4th of July?
Born on the 4th of July. That's the one. Yeah. That's why we didn't mention
Born
it.
in the USA.
Yeah.
It's Bruce Springsteen, isn't it?
Sounds that right. I'm pretty sure he played Bruce Springsteen in the movie. Anyway.
Okay. Well, thank you, and hopefully, you could laugh at some of our stupid jokes and everything like that as kind of some different kind of entertainment this time. But thanks for listening again, Ryan Tannehill and the group.
We appreciate you. Yeah.
And as always, Chad, play your game.
Play your game, Chad.